Hello and welcome, my name is Sarah and I create small tutorials for The Sims 4. In today's video we're gonna go over traits and I'm going to use the TDES Builder for this. If you're unfamiliar with the TDES Builder, I will pop up a video at the top corner that you can watch, which is just an overview of this program. So anyways, let's dive into it and let's start modding. So first things first, I'm going to find traits. Now there is a difference between a regular trait and preferences. So if you're trying to create preferences, then also please watch my video about preferences. I will link it again in the top right corner. Now when we are trying to create a trait, there are a few things that are important to know. First things first, almost every single type of trait has a 32-bit instance. The two different type of traits that can have either a 32-bit instance or a 64-bit are the gameplay traits and the hidden traits. Everything else always has a 32-bit instance. Now let's scroll through this list and actually have a look what is important to always put in your traits and which are things that we can just leave out or aren't fully necessary unless required for your traits. First things first, we have the display name. Display name is very important. This is the name of the trait. Now you can see this little key over here, and this means required in sim data, so you will also need to make sure that these numbers that you place in here are correct in the sim data. Now, if you are using a trait from in-game as a template, you will also see the display name gender neutral. You can either use that or not, but this name is just the same as the one as in the display name. Then we get icons, which is also important because this is the icon of the trait. Then we have our trait description, which is the description of the trait. Then some traits, not all, might have a trait origin description. And now this is the description that is between two brackets, which says, for example, from aspiration. Then we get the trait type. Now this is one of the most important parts because this will tell you where this trait is placed. We can click on this link button over here and then we get all the different type of traits that we could actually create. So it's now set as personality, so this means it's a personality trait. We have a gameplay trait, which is a trait that is given throughout gameplay. So when an aspiration is completed or your sim does a certain interaction and then they receive a trait. So any type of trait given during gameplay. And like I said earlier, these can be 64-bit. Then we get a hidden trait, which is a trait given to a sim but is not displayed for the player. So the player cannot see that the sim has this trait, therefore the trait is hidden. And now this trait can also be a 64-bit and is 9 out of 10 times also given during gameplay. Then other traits that are used quite often are the like and dislike traits. We also got fear traits, so you can create your very own fears. And that's kind of it for traits that are used most of the time. Moving on, we get ages. Now, ages is also something that is very important to mention because these are the ages for when the traits are available. Now, if you are creating gameplay traits, you 9 out of 10 times probably want to select every single thing. Unless it's really just something that is not available for children. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because since the Life and Dead expansion pack came out, we got the option to inherit traits for when we're dead or something like that. I don't quite know. I can't quite remember how that system works, but we'll get to that in a second anyways. But if your trait is inherited when you're dead, you also want to make sure that if you do the rebirth thing, that your trait is available for all ages, because otherwise when your sim is reborn as a baby, they will not receive this trait because the trait will not be available for babies or any other life stage. So I always just like to make sure to select everything. So right now it says that my trait is available for every single life stage. Then we get conflict traits. Now conflict traits are mostly used for likes and dislikes, but conflict traits are just traits that are not available together. So you could, for example, say if my sim has the need trait, they will not be able to receive this trait that I'm currently creating during gameplay. Now we could also choose if this trait is available for a certain occult. So let's say only vampires and werewolves could have this trait. Then we just make sure to click on occult and then select vampires and werewolves. Now if nothing is selected, so if we unselect this, it just means anyone with any occult can receive this trait. Now something else that could be fun to add for creating your own trait, to add more personality to your trait, is to create buff replacements. Now these are replacements for certain buffs in game. Now let's say my sim loves being evil and there is this negative buff about evil conversation or something. We could use a buff replacement to change it to, oh, I love evil conversations. So it will replace a buff from the game to something different. Now to do this, we're just going to click and say buff, select that, select this one as well, and then for buff we just select whichever buff we are trying to replace. So I'm just going to click on the first one because I'm just trying to show you, and then in value we add the buff that we've created to replace the buff we are trying to replace. Then you get buffs just by itself. Now these are buffs that are just added to the sim with the trait. Now these are not buffs that happen every so often, like randomly. These buffs are always there. Now something else that is fun to add are buffs proximities. And these are just buffs that happen onto a sim if they are, for example, close to a vampire sim and they don't like vampires, or they're scared of the occult or whatever, and then they'll get like a negative buff. So if a sim with a certain trait is in their surrounding areas. Then we get a list of interactions we could add. Now these are mixer interactions, so interactions between two sims, and we could just add them in here. We gotta make sure to add the affordance links. So the affordance is just the tuning ID of the interactions that you have created. Something else that might be fun to add in a gameplay trait is a loot on trait add. Now these are loots that are happening once the trait is added to the sim. So this only happens once when the trait is added. Continuing on interactions, we also got super affordances. Now these are interactions on objects. And then the last thing I want to mention are whim sets. So here we could add a set of whims that will happen in the whims section when our sim has the trait. Now these are the main things I wanted to mention for creating traits. Now let's actually open up a trait from the game and have a look at that. So I opened two different types of traits, which is a personality trait, the perfectionist trait, and then we have the night owl trait, which is a gameplay trait. Now, the perfectionist trait is a personality trait, which is a trait that can be chosen through casts. So let's actually have a little read on this. So first we're starting off with ages. So we got baby in there, but as baby you can't really pick and choose traits. And then toddler and infant aren't on here because this trait is not allowed to be picked as a toddler or a infant, but it is available for children. So we got from child to elder, this trait is available. Now, like I said, if you are choosing a trait from the game as a template, you will have the display name and then the display name gender neutral, which in this case are not the same as in the same numbers, but you can just use the same numbers because the wording over here, perfectionist and perfectionist, is exactly the same. One thing I'm just realizing that I forgot to mention are tags, but in tags you will put where this trait is placed in class. So in this case it's a trait personality, and then in the trait group lifestyle, so it's displayed in the lifestyle category of the class section where you pick your traits. And then we got our little description over here, and just as it says over here, personality as in trait type. Now moving on to the night owl, it's a little bit different because this is a trait that can be received during gameplay. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this trait is available for every single age, and the reason for that is because it has the trait reincarnate valid tag. Now, this is the tag you add to your trait if the trait is available for when your sim is reborn into the game. This is a gameplay trait, and the trait origin description over here, it says from reward store. So this is what I mentioned with the 2 brackets, and it just means like, where did you receive this trait during gameplay? So I hope it's now clearer how to create a trait, and if you have any more questions about traits, then please feel free to ask those questions in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and this video was helpful, then don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more Sims 4 content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye!